Ken Burns, the goat of documentary filmmaking. So much so, he's got an iMovie effect named after him, and we changed the way we assessed musicology in the HSC because of him. In line with our welcome to show business principle, we let the photos, music, and videos do the talking. But let's go to the syllabi just to double check what our students should be doing. Students should engage in activity that reflects the real world practice of performers, composers, and audiences. This is backed up by recent research from Rachel White out of the Sydney Conservatorium of Music, which found that a big commonality between all high achieving HSC programs is authentic learning.
For the musicology learning experience in both Stage 6 music syllabi, we interpret the real-world practice or authentic learning experience to be the creation of music documentary films based on the topic. So we ask ourselves the question, WWKBD. What would Ken Burns do if he was designing an HSC musicology assessment? He'd design a process and create resources for students to make music documentary films. We did this, and in this video, we're going to take you through our approach to musicology step by step so that you can create your own Ken Burns inspired Viva Voce assessment alternative.
Let's dive back into the syllabus, where we can see that musicology is the study of styles and genres from 4 different perspectives: historical, sociological, notational, and analytical. And it should encompass a range of experiences such as identifying and commenting on the concepts of music, analyzing, collecting information, using different types of technology, and investing some of the cultural contexts of music. We can see here the list of contexts that are provided for us by the syllabus, and we choose the most open ones, such as an instrument and its repertoire, and this provides the context for us, not only for the music documentary, but the other learning experiences as well. Now might be a great opportunity to zoom out a little bit and see where this music documentary fits in the broader scheme of the HSC program.
For us, the gig is the container for the integration of the learning experiences of performance, composition, musicology, and oral. Choosing the gig for Stage 6 is pretty straightforward. It's a concert for 2 or 3 middle-aged people, otherwise known as the HSC exam. So, Year 12, each student becomes the musical director of their own gig. Year 12 musicians present 1 gig per term, which drives them to find and analyse a piece to play, write an arrangement of the piece, rehearse the piece with their bandmates from the class, and make a music documentary film based on the topic. Gigs can be a ratchet to impel musicians to study, write, source, and rehearse music by the opportunity to share the creative product with an audience. Whether it's a performance, an analysis, or a composition, the proof is in the musical pudding, which is why for us, it's all about the gig. The gig is the ideal container to integrate the learning experiences.
David Elliott and Marissa Silverman, in their book Music Matters, mention that it's important to research pertinent historical and social factors that may have influenced the composer's decisions about how they wanted their pieces to be performed. So in order for our students to express their performance authentically, they need to empathize with the culture that the piece sits in. And we get our students to always ask the question, what's in this for me? So that they're always applying what they're learning into their practice.
So how do we take a piece of music and the experiences and turn it into a great documentary? In Ken Burns's masterclass, he says that you want to use everything at your disposal to activate your audience's imagination. The cannon firing, troops trampling, bat cracking. There are a million things that you could do, that you have to do before you go, whoa, that's working. What we see often is students presenting and reading loads of text. But in order for us to realize our goal, and following Elliott and Silverman, who remind us how musicological research can change the way musicians interpret and perform music, we need to get inside the style and context through rich media and present that in a way that Ken Burns would be proud of. So let's get into it.
In our Stage 6 course, Musicology Instructions and Resources, we give these students instructions to compile their resources using the guiding question, what would Ken Burns do? Or hashtag WWKBD. And we make it explicit to them that they should choose their music, pictures, and videos carefully, as this is the primary evidence for their learning. And then your speech or narration will link these resources and show us how they support your position. So as they are collecting their evidence, or what Ken Burns would call B-roll, they are to outline major historical developments, influence of technology, key developments, important techniques, key players, key recordings, and your influences.
The virtual space that we're showing now supports the students not only in class, but at home too. Rather than everybody working lockstep, as in the traditional approach, students can access the virtual space as they need it. Interactions with the teacher are generally conversational and dialogical, as the musicians have had years of carefully scaffolded training in managing their own work and learning, and being able to identify and solve problems as they arise. If you would like to know exactly how we implement this alongside the other learning experiences, then sign up to our gig-based Learning for Senior High School course through TTA, Teacher Training Australia. We'll sit down with you and your faculty and apply this with you in your specific context.
Let's take a look at the template linked. Yes, that's right, it's just a blank Google slide. And under the hood, this is done through the Google Drive LTI in Canvas, in case you're wondering. And this creates an automatic copy for everyone in the class that we can keep track of. Why just a blank template? Well, we want our students to attack the research with an open mind and with a stance of a good director, as Ken Burns so beautifully describes, as someone who can accept contradiction and nuance and recognize that this is human experience. We have different perspectives, and that's okay. We don't want them just to regurgitate information from the internet or just distill information into what Ken describes as white man theory, which is just outlining the major players. We actually want them to get into the cracks of society and work out what was happening in the streets.
As students research and collect still images, videos, audio recordings, etc., they use the blank template as a diary that houses it all under one roof. The speaker notes are then used to write a script to their source materials. They then open a project in ScreenFlow or any other personally owned video editing software to record the documentary and incorporate Ken Burns inspired effects to still images and any other post-production techniques to emphasize the key parts of their research. Dr. James Humberstone, FRSA, from the Sydney Conservatorium, is an expert on cognitive load theory in music education, and we were recently able to talk to him about the death by PowerPoint phenomenon that we see so often. Students find it really hard to not just present information as text, and Dr. Humberstone has some answers for us.
Yeah, I think when Pete called it death by PowerPoint, that's a saying that we've all heard, and quite often people just think that means rambling on and talking and talking and talking for too long. But actually, there are specific things that we know about cognition, about the way that people learn, that are that we can apply when we're presenting. And you know, PowerPoint kind of has a really bad name, but actually PowerPoint's fantastic, and we're really lucky in music because there's loads of ways that you can show stuff to do with music. Not just, we don't need to show words and even scores, because we've got, like, nowadays so much video and of course the sound itself available to us. But so what I teach when I'm teaching in the course is a little bit about the science behind cognition for when people are presenting. And it could be like making a video like you're talking about, a documentary, or it could just simply be teaching in your classroom and using aids to teach children. What the clever people like John Sweller at UNSW, so actually cognitive load theory started off here in Australia. And what John Sweller worked out was that actually there's this thing called the redundancy effect. So if we use the visual part of our learning and our processing in our brain and the auditory part at the same time on the same information, they actually cancel each other out. So basically you go one or the other. Now, to be honest, it's a little bit uncomfortable whether you're the teacher in the classroom with a big slide of text or whether you're the documentary maker putting that on the screen as part of your documentary to have just a big thing of text. Because what are you going to do then? Like, I'm just going to give you a minute to read that. In fact, you'll see people who know about cognitive load theory who want you to read when they give, their TED talk or whatever, will say, I'll just give you a second to read that. And that is actually a perfectly legit way of doing it. But again, you're talking about show business. So not so good for show business. Here we are, pizzazz, pizzazz, pizzazz. I'll just give you a minute to read that. It's a little bit uncomfortable, isn't it? Yeah, Ken Burns you've never seen that in one of his films. So what Sweller worked out, looking at, what really works and what doesn't work, is combinations in music. The best way to explain music is through the music. In fact, the only reason that we need to use words to explain music is because we have to do things like have written exam papers. It's a way of assessing that students have come to take the abstract thing, which is sound, and turn it into understandings that they can do in words. There's another whole debate we can have about whether that's a particularly useful thing or not, but that's the skill that we teach. Next, provide visuals that go with the music. So video is an incredibly powerful learning tool. But if you're teaching score-based music, then great, put the score on the screen. So we need to think in complementaries. We need to think about showbiz and about presenting. And we need to think about, for the student, do we need to say it a number of ways and a number of times? So for instance, actually delivering something, having, something simple like a heading, but not a list of bullet points. So that sort of, you're thinking in terms of like the sections, chopping information into sections, and then providing that maybe as a musical example, and then explaining what was in the music example, and then maybe providing another musical example. So again, lots and lots of complementary things. And that's a 5-minute version of a 2-hour lecture.
That's very good. Thank you very much, Dr. Humberstone. So I think, given that it takes a 2-hour lecture, which you've condensed to 5 minutes, our job as for Pete and I as GBLers is to act, as Ken Siegel says, is to act as agents of simplicity. So I think we want to keep all of that. So all of that's wonderful, but to condense the 2 hours into the 5, into the one phrase of what would Ken Burns do? And so for teachers, to be thinking about how do I share information with my students, what would Ken Burns do? And then for teachers to help their students to present information back to the class or to the world generally, what would Ken Burns do? And it's just a matter of us as educators and as students to go, wait a second, I'm expert in this. I've spent a lifetime consuming it, and now rather than thinking about a school presentation, I'm just going to think about what would Ken Burns do.
We hope you found that interesting and insightful, and we thank Dr. James Humberstone for his time. So let's put his words into practice and take a look at a student example you can see here with video, narration, and still images using the Ken Burns effect. She's using this to support her research, and it's clear that she's asked herself the key guiding question when making her music documentary, WWKBD, what would Ken Burns do?
Students then upload their music documentaries to our Learning Management System, or LMS, and we can use the built-in rubric in Canvas, this is called SpeedGrader, to give them a summative mark. Attach files, write a comment, provide a video or audio response, and all supplemented by a post-assessment interview that we conduct with each student on an individual level. This provides feedback on their music documentary as well as all other parts of the gig, including performance, composition, and oral components.
We hope this might inspire you to take a fresh look at your own unique context and perhaps develop your own Viva Voce alternative that gives your students an authentic outworking for the musicology learning experience. For us, making music documentaries is a great Viva Voce alternative. But in order to reduce the amount of time spent on video editing, while still getting a slick and polished product, you need to get on board ScreenFlow. And that's exactly what we talk about in this video. So be sure to click on that video. We'll see you guys over there. Have a nice day.